They're the Veruca Salt of baseball fans. Everyone, it's that, or they're depressed. Nobody has it worse than Dodger fans. Um,
Nobody.
yeah. Well, let's talk about that maybe a little bit more. Let's peel back that tomato. I know that's not the same, but who cares? But let's peel back that onion and talk about why you guys try so hard to validate the 2020 World Series as if you don't even believe it's a World Series. Mookie Betts and Kenley Jansen were on Mookie Betts' podcast talking about how, well, it was harder to win the World Series because, and this was hard-hitting analysis, I never even thought about this, that they had to play baseball. So who can argue with that?
Well, I mean, did you go to work during the pandemic?
I did.
A lot of people didn't. A lot of people didn't have a job to go to. These guys, they did it for our entertainment, first of all.
Okay.
And I mean, I get it. They have like the best hotels, the best everything. But you're in the middle of a
100%.
pandemic. Of course, it's going to be kind of scary that you're going to be out when you don't know a lot about it at the time.
Right.
In terms of being the hardest, well, you're away from home. You had barely any fans. Whatever. It's still hard. I mean,
don't see that as being that
you have a
hard.
family. I'm sure if you're away from them for a week or more, first you'll be like, "Oh, this is fun. I got time for
they
myself."
didn't have a bubble, did they? They were able to be with their family. No,
I don't remember. Yeah, some of them did have their families. Some of them bowed out. Some
you
of
had
them,
your family.
But I'm just saying, I'm not saying it was the hardest, but it's not like it was baseball as usual. They weren't even allowed to play in their own stadium.
Yes, 100%. And I can understand why Dodger fans feel cheated because they didn't get a parade. Unless you're willing to fly to Texas, especially during a pandemic where a lot of people aren't working, don't have extra money to fly to Texas. Why you feel a little cheated in that way. But here's my thing. First of all, if I'm talking shit, I'm going to talk shit. So I will say it was only 60 games just because I'm talking shit. I will say a lot of things I don't necessarily think is true just because I'm talking shit. But in all honesty, the 2020 World Series is a legitimate World Series because everyone had the same chance. Everyone's competing. Everyone tried for it. But to say it was the hardest, that means, okay, you're going to compare different years to years. Now you're just opening it up to say it's 60 games. Calm your little ass down. I'm just saying.
Are you saying that the playoffs were harder, or are you saying the whole season was harder? Because
don't include the playoffs in that, because that's still only like 80 games. So you can't even go that route either.
No. I'm saying because everybody says the regular season does not matter. If the Dodgers win 115 games, it does not matter because what they do in the postseason.
That's what Dodger fans say.
No. That's what I've been hearing for years. Like, it doesn't matter if you win 115 games. Prove it in the playoffs. You guys can't do it in the playoffs.
Yeah,
they played more games in the playoffs that season.
Okay.
They played an extra series, which technically
so did every other team that was there, though.
Exactly. This was the first time they played an extra series, which technically makes the path to the championship harder.
Well, that's the same amount of series that goes on now.
Well, now.
Exactly. But that's what I'm saying. That's what we're talking about.
At the time,
we're talking about now. We're talking about
the first of anything is going to be harder, right?
No.
Yes.
Absolutely
if the first time trying
not.
something that it's going to be harder.
Absolutely not.
You play more games. Yeah, it's going to be harder in the playoffs.
To say it wasn't a World Series, I will never be on that train unless I'm talking shit. I just want to get a rise, and I'm just talking shit. But if you're going to go say it's harder, that's where you lose me.
But my thing is, I saw the same take on online, and people are like, "Oh, to say this one is ridiculous," and I'm like, "Well, if you show me a season where you played baseball and tell me which season was harder, then I'll respect it." But I'm gonna take Mookie's. I'm gonna
don't
take
open that wound, Dave. Don't open that. Don't open that. Don't open that box.
Mookie's word.
Don't open that box.
Word.
Don't open that box, Dave.
Jansen, who by the way has played with messed up heart during his career as a so he knows what heart is. And if nobody's gonna tell me on Twitter that that they have no right to say that, then I'm done. I'm not going to hear the rest of the conversation.
Don't open that box, Dave, because Pandora only comes out of the box; it doesn't go in. And if you're gonna open that one, then you can also bring up Corey Seager's quotes where he says that it was discounted. I mean, obviously, it's probably also because he just won a World Series, and maybe he does hold that one a little bit more valuable. That doesn't take away from other. There's players who have won multiple World Series. Certain World Series mean more to them than other ones do. You know, I've heard a lot of interviews because my team has won 3 World Series in 5 years, so they can, you know, pull from multiple World Series. So I don't mind him saying that.
About like 20 years ago?
20 years ago,
still a teenager, weren't you?
20 years ago
was a teenager trying to get women. That was 40 years. Now it's 40 years later, and you're trying to talk about it like it was yesterday.
That was 20 years ago. Was 2004. Okay, that means the Giants were off of a World Series appearance a couple years prior, which is depressing. But no, that was actually 10 years ago.
Hey, but if you do
the math correctly,
Mookie said that. Mookie's won multiple World Series. I would agree if he just won one, and then he's like, yeah, this is the hardest. This is the only one I played in. But he also beat the Dodgers in 2018. So, I mean...
And they cheated. But, so don't open that wound either, Dave.
So that one was easy.
So that one was easy. But you can't go that route either, because you can pull up Corey Seager's quotes of saying that this one is more legitimate. So... Listen, we can go back.
You got a parade. I mean, that's the only difference. You got a parade. You know, the playoffs.
Yeah, but that's pretty cool.
You got an extra series, but it's still the same. The game is the same.
Right.
You have to win the same amount of games against the same team.
Sign me up for that. I mean, sign me up for that. That it's a legitimate World Series, just like the rest of them, and I will agree with you 100%. Because, like I said, everyone had the same chance. Everyone wanted it. You can obviously, I'm not the first person to say this. It gets dragged on Twitter every single time a Padre fan opens his mouth about 2020. And you see the celebration down the parade for winning one playoff series that year. But Giants fans were very upset they didn't make the playoffs in 2020 off of a bad call from Rob Drake. To Austin Slater. That gets brought up all the time. So you did care about 2020. So to say it's not a legitimate World Series, that's just wrong, and you just sound like a homer and you're dumb. But to say that it's more, you sound even more like a homer and dumb to me.
But I think if Lincecum came out and whoever it was came out and said this one was the hardest for me, then I'm not going to debate him and say, no, 2020 was harder. Because it
could be harder for the individual. It could be harder for the individual, but to say, like, when you're comparing World Series to one another, you can't take it for just one person's word, because there's 50 people that are playing in that World Series.
Sure, but then we'll never know. Then we can't take their 2 words as if it's
exactly. It's got to be the collective of what everyone says, and it's.
But as a fan,
it's even.
As a fan and not a player, I'll be like, Mookie, yeah, you're right. But if a Giant said the same thing, I'll be like, you know what? Yeah, you're right too. You played it. I mean, it's just how it is.
I disagree. I don't think your homerness would allow you to. I don't think it would happen.
I don't know. I mean, if the 88 Braves won the World Series, what was it, like 3 years ago? I'm sure they thought that was the toughest too. So, and who am I to disagree if they think that? But
I don't want to be that guy. Do you know how many texts I got in 2014 when the Giants won the World Series and they got in on a wild card with the 88 wins? I got a lot of Dodger fan friends texting me, oh, it's not this World Series is fake. You only had to win 88 games. I'm just saying. So next time you bring up 2020,
and I would tell you the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. I
would poke at you. No, but see, I'm just being honest. I'm gonna poke at you, even though deep down you're like, yeah, I know he gets it.
Because you're just talking shit. That's what I'm saying. Yes. That's what I'm saying.
I'm just saying.
You're wrong.
I'm right. I'm not going to go against an MLB player's thought process. If he thinks it's that, then it's that. I'm not going to be Ben Verlander and think I know more than
I'm going to pick the MLB player that agrees with what I'm saying, and then
exactly. That's and if you can't find one that agrees the way you think, then that's your problem.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Hey, nobody can take away how I felt during that last out. So whenever they discredit it or say it wasn't hard or all this, I don't care, because I remember how I felt in that moment. You remember how you felt when the Giants won it. Nobody can take that from us. So that's all that matters. So when
teams, they can't take it away.
Yeah, when teams come in that have never won anything and say that kind of thing, I'm like, I don't care, dude. You don't know what it's like. So what do you?
Now you're shot fired at Padre fans. I'm not sure if any listen. If you do,
there's
you
other teams that don't have a World Series.
That's what
I'm sure they're out there.
let's be real. You were talking, yeah.